What if a single act of kindness could change everything? What if a man, just an ordinary technician, gave something so precious without expecting anything in return, and in doing so, saved a life and unknowingly became the catalyst for redemption? The rain battered the windshield of Daniel Hart's old pickup truck, the wipers struggling to keep up with the downpour. It was late, past midnight, and the streets of Ashwood were deserted, save for the occasional flicker of a street lamp reflecting off the wet asphalt. Daniel's callous hands gripped the steering wheel, his eyes heavy with exhaustion after a 12-hour shift fixing a hospital's HVAC system. The radio crackled faintly, a somber voice breaking through the static. Emergency blood drive at Ashwood General. O-negative donors urgently needed. A life is at stake. Daniel's jaw tightened. O-negative, his blood type, rare, universal, the kind that could save anyone but was always in short supply. He glanced at the dashboard clock, 12:47 a.m. His daughter, Lily, was at home with his sister, probably fast asleep. He could go home, crawl into bed, and forget the plea. No one would know, but something stirred in him, a quiet pull he couldn't ignore. He turned the truck toward Ashwood General. The hospital's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Daniel stepped into the blood donation center, his work boots leaving faint mud tracks on the polished floor. A tired nurse handed him a clipboard with forms. "You're a godsend," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "We're out of O-negative. A patient's life depends on this." Daniel nodded, signing his name in quick, practiced strokes. He didn't ask questions. Didn't need to. Someone needed help, and he could give it. That was enough. As the needle pierced his arm in the bag filled with crimson, he leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling tiles. He thought of his wife, Emma, her laughter, her warmth, now just a memory stolen by cancer 3 years ago. He thought of Lily, her gap-toothed smile, the only piece of Emma he had left. He didn't do this for recognition. He did it because the world had taken so much from him, and giving was the only way he knew to fight back. When it was done, the nurse thanked him profusely, but Daniel just waved her off. "Hope they make it," he said quietly, pulling his jacket over his shoulders and stepping back into the rain. He didn't know who he'd saved. Didn't want to. Knowing made it feel transactional, and that wasn't why he did it. The next morning, Daniel was back at the hospital, not as a donor, but as a guy crawling through dusty vents to fix a broken air handler. His toolbox clinked as he navigated the maintenance corridors, the hum of the hospital's machinery a familiar companion. He was halfway through tightening a bolt when a woman approached him, her heels clicking sharply against a tile. She was polished, professional, her dark blazer and crisp white blouse screaming authority. Her badge read Claringwin, executive assistant. "Mr. Hart?" she asked, her tone clipped but curious. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, setting down his wrench. "That's me." She studied him for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "You donated blood last night." "O-negative." He shrugged, picking up his wrench again. "Yeah, heard the call on the radio." Clara's lips parted, but she hesitated, like she was choosing her words carefully. "The woman you saved, she wants to meet you. She's awake now, and she owns this hospital." Daniel froze, the wrench slipping slightly in his grip. "Owns it." His voice was low, skeptical. He wasn't sure if this was a joke or some kind of misunderstanding. He was just a technician, a single dad scraping by, not someone who rubbed elbows with hospital owners. Clara nodded, her expression unreadable. "Sophia Langford. She's grateful. She'd like to thank you personally." Daniel's first instinct was to say no. He didn't do it for thanks. Didn't want to fuss. But something in Clara's eyes, something intense, almost pleading, made him pause. "I've got work to do," he said finally. "Maybe later." Clara didn't push. She handed him a card with her contact information. "When you're ready, Mr. Hart." She's not going anywhere. As she walked away, Daniel shoved the card into his pocket, his mind racing. Sophia Langford. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like something he'd heard in passing, but never paid attention to. Who was she? And why did someone like that need his blood? Sophia Langford lay in her private hospital suite, the monitors beeping softly around her. The room was more like a luxury hotel than a hospital ward. Plush furniture, soft lighting, a view of the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. But the fore in her arm and the pallor of her skin betrayed the truth. She'd come close to death. A rare complication during a routine procedure had caused massive internal bleeding, and only a last-minute transfusion had saved her. O-negative blood. Her blood type, but not one she'd ever thought she'd need. Sophia was used to being in control. At 42, she'd built Langford Healthcare into an empire, a network of hospitals and clinics that spanned the country. She was a billionaire, a visionary, a woman who made life-and-death decisions every day. But lying in that bed, she felt small, vulnerable, human. Clara had told her about the donor, a man named Daniel Hart, an HVAC technician who worked in her hospital's bowels, who'd answered a desperate call in the middle of the night and walked away without a word. Sophia didn't know why that stuck with her. Maybe it was the anonymity of it, the selflessness, or maybe it was a guilt that had been gnawing at her for years, ever since she'd made a choice that cost her mother her life. She'd been 25, newly in charge of her first hospital, when her mother was admitted with a failing heart. The numbers didn't add up. Her mother's treatment was costly. The hospital was struggling. And Sophia made the call to prioritize resources elsewhere. Her mother died, and Sophia told herself it was a business decision, not a personal one. But the truth was, she'd chosen profit over love, and the weight of that choice had never left her. Now, someone had saved her life without knowing who she was, without expecting anything. It was a kindness she didn't understand, and it unsettled her. Daniel didn't call Clara. He went back to his routine, fixing vents, picking up Lily from school, cooking macaroni and cheese while she chattered about her day. But the card in his pocket felt heavier with each passing day. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting, like the air before a storm. A week later, he was called to the hospital's executive wing to repair a faulty thermostat. It was a part of the building he rarely saw, sleek, modern, with glass walls and mahogany furniture. As he worked, he overheard a conversation through an open door. A woman's voice, sharp and commanding, but tinged with something softer, almost broken. "I want to know who he is. Clara, not just his name." "Who is he?" Daniel's hand stilled. He knew they were talking about him. He should have kept working, but curiosity got the better of him. He stepped closer, peering through the gap in the door. The woman inside was striking. Dark hair pulled into a tight bun, eyes sharp and searching, her presence filling the room. Sophia Langford, he assumed. She didn't look like someone who'd been on death's door a week ago. Clara stood beside her, holding a tablet. He's a widower, single dad, daughter's 7, works here as a technician. No criminal record, no social media presence. Lives quietly, pays his bills on time. Sophia's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not what I mean. Why did he do it? Why walk away without a word?" Daniel's chest tightened. He didn't want to be dissected like this. His life lay bare for someone else's curiosity. He turned to leave, but his toolbox clattered against the wall, betraying his presence. The conversation stopped. Sophia's eyes snapped to the door. "Who's there?" she called. Daniel cursed under his breath. No escaping now. He stepped into the doorway, toolbox in hand, his work shirt stained with grease. "Just fixing the thermostat," he said gruffly. Sophia's gaze softened, but only slightly. "You're Daniel Hart." He nodded, avoiding her eyes. "Yeah." She stood, moving closer, her presence almost overwhelming. "You saved my life." He shrugged, uncomfortable. "Just did what anyone would have." "No," she said firmly. "They wouldn't." The room felt too small, the air too thick. Daniel wanted out, but Sophia's next word stopped him cold. "Why didn't you stay? Why didn't you want to know who I was?" The question hung between them, heavy and raw. Daniel didn't have an answer, not one he could put into words. He thought of Emma, of the nights he'd spent wondering if he could have done more to save her. He thought of Lily, of the world he wanted her to grow up in, a world where people helped each other because it was right, not because they wanted something back. "I don't know," he said finally. "Didn't seem to matter who you were." Sophia stared at him, her expression unreadable. For the first time in years, she felt something crack inside her, a wall she'd built to keep the guilt at bay. This man, this stranger, had given her something she couldn't repay, and that terrified her. Over the next few weeks, Sophia found ways to cross paths with Daniel. She didn't admit it to herself, but she was drawn to him, to the quiet strength he carried like a shield. She offered him a better job at the hospital, which he declined. She sent a gift basket to his house, which he returned. She even tried to pay for Lily's school tuition, but Daniel's response was a polite but firm note. "We're fine. Thanks." Her persistence only frustrated him. "I don't need your charity," he told her one day in the hospital cafeteria, his voice low but steady. "I didn't do it for you to owe me." "Then why?" she pressed, leaning forward, her eyes searching his. Why give something so precious to a stranger? The question hit Daniel like a punch. Why? It was the same question he'd asked himself 1,000 times since Emma's death. Why keep going? Why keep giving when the world took so much? He didn't have an answer, not really. But as he looked at Sophia, he saw something in her eyes. Not just gratitude, but a hunger for understanding, for redemption. "Maybe because it's the only thing that makes sense," he said quietly. "The world's a mess. People hurt. If I can fix a little of that, I do." Sophia didn't respond, but his words stayed with her. They echoed in her mind as she sat in board meetings, as she reviewed budgets, as she made decisions that affected thousands of lives. She'd spent years building walls, convincing herself that numbers and efficiency were what mattered. But Daniel's act of kindness had cracked those walls, and now she couldn't stop seeing the faces behind the numbers. A question to ponder. What does it mean to give without expecting anything in return? Can a single act of kindness truly change the course of a life, or is it just a fleeting moment in a world too broken to fix? The turning point came months later, when a whistleblower leaked documents exposing Langford Healthcare's cost-cutting measures Sophia had approved years ago, measures that had led to subpar care for patients who couldn't pay. The news hit like a tidal wave, threatening to destroy her empire. Protesters gathered outside Ashwood General, chanting her name like a curse. Sophia could have fought back. Hired lawyers spun the narrative. That's what the old Sophia would have done. But the new Sophia, the one who'd been saved by a stranger's blood, couldn't. She saw her mother's face in every patient turn away, in every family left to grieve. She saw Daniel's quiet resolve, his refusal to let the world's cruelty define him. She called a press conference, standing alone at a podium as cameras flashed. "I made mistakes," she said, her voice steady but raw. "I prioritize profit over people. I can't undo the past, but I can change the future. Starting today, Langford Healthcare will provide free care to anyone who can't afford it. No questions asked." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Clara, standing offstage, stared at her in disbelief. Sophia was risking everything, her fortune, her reputation, her legacy. But as she spoke, she felt lighter, like a weight she'd carried for years was finally lifting. Daniel watched the press conference on the break room TV, his co-workers whispering around him. He didn't know what to make of it. Part of him wanted to believe her. But another part, the part that had lost Emma to a system that valued money over lives, wasn't so sure. Their paths crossed again at a hospital charity event. One Sophia insisted Daniel attend. She'd invited him and Lily, offering them a rare night out. Lily, now 8, was wide-eyed at the sparkling lights and fancy food, tugging at Daniel's hand to explore. Sophia watched them from across the room, her heart aching at the sight of the father and daughter who'd unknowingly changed her life. When they finally spoke, it was quiet, away from the crowd. "You didn't have to do all this," Daniel said, gesturing to the event. "I wanted to," Sophia replied. "Not because I owe you, but because I want to be better. You showed me what that looks like." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. He saw the cracks in her polished exterior, the vulnerability she'd spent years hiding. And for the first time, he felt something shift in himself, a willingness to trust, to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world wasn't as broken as he thought. Over the next year, Daniel and Sophia's lives intertwined. It wasn't a fairy tale, not by any stretch. There were arguments, misunderstandings, moments when Daniel's grief and Sophia's guilt threatened to pull them apart. But there were also moments of connection. Quiet dinners at Daniel's small apartment, where Sophia learned to laugh again. Afternoons at the park with Lily, where Daniel saw glimpses of the man he used to be. Sophia rebuilt her company, not as an empire, but as a beacon of care. She named a new wing of Ashwood General after Emma, a gesture Daniel didn't ask for but quietly appreciated. And Daniel, slowly, began to let Sophia in, not just into his life, but into his heart. The story didn't end with a grand gesture or a dramatic declaration. It ended with a moment. Daniel, Sophia, and Lily sitting on a park bench, watching the sunset, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. It was a moment of healing, of trust, of two people who've been broken by the world, finding a way to mend each other. A note from the author. If you've been touched by Daniel and Sophia's story, please like and subscribe for more tales of human connection and redemption. Your support keeps these stories alive. Their lives have been rewritten by a single act of kindness, a ripple that grew into a wave. Daniel's blood had saved Sophia's life, but it was his heart, his quiet, unwavering goodness, that saved her soul. And in return, Sophia gave him something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. The world was still messy, still broken, but in that moment, on that bench, it felt a little less so, and that was enough.